The year was 1932, and the Depression was in full swing. Millions were out of work, and many were left in poverty and homelessness. Among those affected were thousands of World War I veterans. Having little money and being hit hard by the Depression, like millions of other Americans, many veterans, along with their families, traveled to Washington, D.C. to protest. The cause of this protest was the fact that Congress in 1924 had passed a bill providing bonuses for World War I veterans. However, this bonus wasn't scheduled to be fully paid until 1945. Because of the desperate position the Depression put many veterans in, they wanted their bonuses early in order to improve their dire situations. Led by Walter W. Waters, thousands of veterans began to come to Washington, D.C. to join other protesters. At Washington, D.C., the demonstrators occupied abandoned shacks below the Capitol. The protesters, or the Bonus Army as they called themselves, also occupied the 12th Street, B Street, 3rd Street, Pennsylvania Avenue, and an area on Anacostia Flats, which was 30 acres in size. This site in particular was named Camp Bartlett, named after the owner of the site, John H. Bartlett, who had allowed the Bonus Army to camp on his property. Across the locations I've just mentioned, the veterans set up shanty towns and tents as a temporary place to stay. In these shanty towns, food, water, and housing were inadequate. However, Waters managed to keep the Bonus Army under control. Nonetheless, tensions arose as the 10 to 25,000 veterans, along with their families, grew ever more hungry. Trying to help, Brigadier General Pelham D. Glassford proposed to spend $75,000 to feed the protesters, but Congress refused. It also didn't help that General MacArthur cited fears that the Bonus Army was engaging in communist activities, though the General Staff Intelligence reported that only 26 of their leaders were even communist. These fears only increased tensions between the government and the protesters. In mid-June, Congress passed a bill to pay the veterans their bonuses, raising the hopes of many. However, Hoover, who was opposed to the bill, said he would veto it. He didn't need to, though, as the Senate defeated the bill. This discouraged many veterans who then left. Up to 2,000 to 10,000 protesters remained, however. These remaining veterans continued to protest for their bonuses for the next few weeks. As the demonstrators grew hungry and the tensions between the government and the Bonus Army became worse, some protests almost turned into riots. The local authorities became alarmed at this, and they asked Hoover to intervene in order to stop the violence. Then, on July 28, Hoover sent the army out to disperse and drive out the Bonus Army after protesters threw bricks at the police. The troops, who were led by General MacArthur, began the job of driving out the protesters. George O. Patton also joined to help clear out the Bonus Army. Since the veterans had no intention of leaving, the army attacked them with tear gas, clubs, bayonets, and sabers. On Pennsylvania Avenue, the army used tanks armed with machine guns to attack the protesters. Once the army and police reached the shanty towns, they set fire to the tents and shanties to drive out the veterans. This caused many of the remaining demonstrators to flee to Camp Bartlett. They figured that since it was on private property, they would be safe. However, the army cleared it out after giving the Bonus Army a few hours to leave. Congress then gave the remaining protesters $100,000 to leave, ending the protest. This event shocked the nation. Though some newspapers tried to justify Hoover's response, the public in general was shocked that the army would attack their veterans, who for the most part protested peacefully. Because of this, Hoover's bid for re-election was doomed, as he lost any support he previously had. Hundreds of protesters were injured as a result of tear gas, bricks, and other weapons the soldiers used against them. There were also 2 killed during the clashes between the veterans and the army. In 1933, a second Bonus Army assembled in Washington, D.C. once again to protest. This time it was met by Eleanor Roosevelt and Louis Howe. While Congress didn't give the veterans their bonuses, the Civilian Conservation Corps was created. This new program allowed many veterans to find work. In 1936, veterans would finally see the change they protested for when Congress passed a bill to pay $2 billion in veterans' benefits. This bill would set the foundation for the GI Bill of Rights. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe as there will be more videos in the future.